They call. We win this 746 big blind pot, 747 with rounding. And yeah, we pay a good 2 big blinds and rake. Welcome back to Zenith Poker. All right, so we're going to do a update on my side of the Bankroll challenge. So for those of you that don't know, Josh and I are doing a bit of a bankroll race. So we're both doing a similar challenge, but we're doing it at sort of different stakes. So Josh is taking the 1K to 10K leg of the challenge, and I'm taking the 10K to 50K leg of the challenge. And so we're both going to be playing fairly regularly over the next few months and streaming many of our sessions. We will be doing these regular sort of update videos and regular graphs so we can keep everybody involved. I'm doing the 10K to 50K leg of the challenge. And so I'm going to be starting off at probably around 200 NL and 500 NL. Going up much more than that with such a small bankroll is probably too risky. So on the stream, I'll probably be mostly streaming some 200 NL until the bankroll gets a bit bigger. And then we'll switch over to 500 NL once we get to around, 30, 40 buy-ins at. But off stream, I'll just be playing a little bit faster than on stream. As you guys can probably imagine, if you're actually streaming and trying to explain every hand, and you actually can't play anywhere near as quickly as you can if you are playing by yourself. And so I'm not going to stream every session because doing that would mean that I don't get as many hands in. So on the stream, I've been playing at 200 NL zone, and I've been playing 2 tables at the same time. But off the stream, I can play much faster, and so I'm actually 4 tabling zone, mixing between 200 and 500. So basically, I'll be playing 4 tables at the same time. 2 of them are the 500 tables, and 2 of them are the 200 tables. And I play roughly the same strategy regardless of which stake I'm playing, as you guys will see. So let's dive into the database. So far I've played, for this first week, I've played around 6,600 hands. And in this, we are up at a win rate of 13 big blinds per 100 hands, all in adjusted dollars. So if we change it to currency, we're up over $1,000 in all in EV, but that doesn't really matter for the challenge. We need to win flips for this one. We are actually roughly break even. So let's jump into some of the interesting hands that I have played so far. So I guess we can start with the losing hands first, since that is probably a little bit more instructive, and then we can think about the winning hands afterwards. We have pocket kings. Button opens it up with the 10-8 offsuit. Small blind comes over the top for 10 big blinds with the ace-4 of spades. We have king of spades, king of clubs, and we go for this cold 4-bet to 28 big blinds. Usually with hands like kings, queens, ace-king offsuit, I like to 4-bet a bit bigger, especially these cold 4-bets. And we're a little bit deeper, so that probably is part of the decision as well. So nice big chunky cold 4-bet. If I had aces, ace king suited, ace queen suited, I might 4-bet a little bit smaller, just because those hands actually benefit a bit more from having a slightly deeper stack pot ratio. Ace-4 suited decides to come along, and the ace-4 flops essentially a straight and flush draw, and they've also got an overcard to our kings. They check, we bet about third pot. Ace-4 suited rips it in. We're obviously snap calling with kings, and they make the flush. So unfortunate run out there, but that is poker for you. So look at the next one. Ace queen suited, running into aces, so you can guess how this hand is probably going to go. Pocket sixes. We have ace queen. We go for the 3-bet. So usually out of the small blind, I like to split my 3-bet range into sort of a big size and a small size, and sort of exploitatively, I just like weaker pocket pairs, suited Broadway type hands into the smaller size, and then like some offsuit stuff and like kings, queens, ace king offsuit into the bigger size. Same reason why I split the 4-bet sizing. Aces comes over the top with basically a min click 4-bet. We call with the ace queen. 10-9-9. We check. Aces goes for a quarter pot bet. We can probably start to consider folding a hand like this at this particular stage. We would probably have some ace queen suited and other suited broadways. So maybe this float is a bit on the loose side, but I do block a lot of hands. And players with ace king tend not to bet these sorts of boards. So like you're either you're usually going to be ahead of the bluffs, and you don't really have to worry too much about the ace king when your ace or your queen actually gets there. You only have to worry about like pocket kings, pocket aces, and pocket queens. So that works pretty well as a float because in a good chunk of the time, if they're bluffing, which they will sort of hit this board and would kind of bet everything, except for like ace king and maybe ace queen. I think that this hand will perform reasonably well drawing to a pair and then stacking off. Of course, there are these situations where you don't draw to a pair and your opponent sort of barrels into you. In those situations, it's a bit difficult to decide whether or not to call down with the ace queen. And also cold 4-bets. What level is this? 500 is generally pretty nutted anyway. So we go for the call. We make our top pair top kicker, which usually is nice unless our opponent has aces or kings. They bet the turn. We call. Brick 3, check. They bet the river, and we call and lose to the aces. So I don't dislike the way they play the hand. Maybe the flop float could probably... It's probably close. It depends on the player pool at the time. Some of the time the player pool gets a little bit rowdy, and so I'm more inclined to make those kinds of floats. Here we've got ace king suited. We go for the big chunky 3-bet and the aces flats. With our ace king, we flop top 2, pocket aces flops top set, so we're in a lot of trouble. We are basically drawing dead unless we get the other 2 kings. So this is going to be instructive about the normal way that I sort of play ace king when I flop top 2, ace king, ace queen when you flop top 2. It's basically bet big-ish on the flop turn and then like river small out of position. So I go for like a half-ish pot bet. Aces calls, which is exactly what they should be doing. Brick on the turn, half pot the turn, aces calls, and then we have the river, and like we're betting like 35% on the river for the all in. Aces snaps us off, and we lose to the aces there. Ace queen, we go for the squeeze to 14.5. Probably could make it a little bit bigger, but 14.5 is reasonable. And let's see which of these 2 hands calls. Obviously, the ace-10 offsuit should fold. The pocket 7s, I mean, he's pretty deep. If anyone actually remembers this hand on stream, I basically is like, this guy's got pocket 7s or they've got some random airball. We decide to check it. 7 queen 2 is a very dryish board. Doesn't really hit too many hands in our squeeze range. Besides the ace queen, king queen. And it will probably hit the ace queen component of this call the open then call the squeeze range. So this hand I think like is a good chunk of the time like pocket pairs, follow the queen, ace queen, some king queen suited, and some like other random suited Broadway hands. Like maybe an ace jack suited is reasonable. So pocket 7s, obviously it's a set. They're betting into us. And I think we call down on a pretty bricky run out. I mean, after the turn brings both a straight and flush draws, and then the river is a 2, which is an absolute brick. Half pot jam is difficult to fold, but then again, this was at 200, so maybe players at 200 aren't creative enough to find too many bluffs on the river for 200 big blinds. Pocket 3s, we open it up to 2 big blinds in the cutoff. Falls around to the small blind who goes for a very small 3-bet. Pot size 3-bet, so that's pretty damn small. And so obviously I'm going to be continuing with a lot of pocket pairs, basically just to set mine. We flop the straight draw, so 2, 5, 4. We've got pocket threes. Obviously, we're going to have some other sets here, pocket twos, pocket fives, pocket fours. The pocket threes got significant amount of equity against over pairs. So we can see here that our pocket threes has 37% equity against the kings with a spade. If the kings didn't have a spade, we'd have even more equity with a backdoor flush draw. They pot it. We call. 9 comes, bring a second flush draw. They go 3/4 pot. We call. 9 brick on the river, and they just rip it in. And I usually don't like to be doing like pure hero calls with pretty marginal pairs for a triple barrel in a 3-bet pot. Although I did do that with the ace queen the previous hand, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. This one, we get pocket jacks, pocket kings in the cutoff opens up. Some guy calls with the 4-3 suited because, you know, 4-3 suited. It's suited. We squeeze with the jacks 15. Kings goes for the 4-bet, and we rip it in for the 130-ish blinds, and we don't pick the quads that time. Pocket queens. So we're in the button. We open up with queens. We get 3-bet by the big blind. We go for the 4-bet, as you should. And villain likes to 3-bet and call 4-bets with 3-5 suited. So queens flops are set, and we get this 3-5 flopping the open ender. We bet small. They go for a raise. We're like, yeah, they've flopped a set, or they've got ace queen, or they just bluffing us. Gonna let them keep doing that. I call. They hit their magic 7, giving them the straight, so we are now drawing. I'm not too worried about this hand because they didn't really have 3-5. If they have 3-5 and they make it, good on them. They rip it in. We snap it off, and we don't make a boat on the river. All right, we get the king 10. We go for the 3-bet. Villain calls. We flop top pair, second kicker. We lit out. Pocket fours goes for the raise. We call. Check the turn. Pocket fours bets. We rip it in. Pocket fours snaps us off. And they bink the river. Oh well. All right, let's go and take a look at the hands that we won. All right. Starting off strong with pocket aces. I think this is one of the biggest hands that we won. This one is a 700 big blind pot at 200 mil, which is nice. King queen offsuit in small blind opens it up to 3 big blinds. We 3-bet the aces to 9 big blinds. They call. We flop top boat, which is always nice. And they actually flop trips. So they check. We go for a quarter pot-ish bet. On this board is like pretty dry. They usually are going to have a bunch of underpairs and like suited connectors, which have a lot of difficulty continuing into small bet. Or they've got like an ace, trip queens, or the suited Broadway hands, which obviously those hands will easily continue against a small bet, but the small bet is mostly designed to put a lot of pressure on the underpairs. The king queen goes for the raise, as they should. This is a pretty decent hand to raise. Trips is in a 3-bet pot, still pretty strong. But we've got top boat, so it's going to be difficult for them to outdraw us. They need to draw 2 quads. Brick on the turn. The 7 doesn't really bring anything for either player. They go for a pretty chunky bet, about 3/4 pot. Aces, I don't think there's any real reason to raise this. This hand is really good at protecting the remaining ace X against these queen X's. So it just kind of calls down. Different hand like ace queen or king queen itself maybe would raise, but this bet is pretty big anyway. So a lot of in position should just be calling down and then like ripping the river. 8 on the river, which is also pretty much a brick for the same reason that the 7 was a brick. Nothing really improves. They bet 3/4 pot again. We got pocket aces, pretty easy decision, just rip it in. Maybe we can get called by a weaker boat, and they decide to hero call with their trips. Which I don't think that too many trips should be hero calling here. Just because of the total amount of boats with the ace queen. Anyway, they call. We win this 746 big blind pot, 747 with rounding. And yeah, we pay a good 2 big blinds and rake. All right, ace king. We open it up. They flat the queen 9 offsuit in the small blind, which I'm not a fan of. And the 10-8 suited, this is reasonable. You can flat these sorts of hands in the big blind. The queen 9 donks the gut shot. We call with the ace king. The queen 9 gets there, makes the straight. And now we're drawing to a flush with our ace of spades. They bet, we call, the flush comes in the river, so this is a flush over flush situation where we've got the nut flush and they've got the second nut flush. They bet, we rip it, they call, and we win. Okay, so pocket kings, the queen 6 opens, we go for our big 3-bet size. The ace king in the big blind wakes up and goes for a really big 3-bet to 37. So it's about like a little over 3/4 of the pot. And obviously with kings, we just rip it in pretty straightforward. Like we get called by everything. And then ace king is snapping us off as well. I'm pretty sure they've got like close to direct odds to actually call. Yeah, close to direct odds against pocket kings to actually call the jam. So anyway, and we hold. Queen 10, we open it up. We face a small 3-bet. The ace 9 suited folds. If I remember correctly, that's a decent fold. We call with the queen 10. Make our top pair. They bet into us. I mean, we're going to stick around with top pair. Oh, we make the backdoor flush draw coming through. They bet it again, another half pot. So we're obviously going to continue with the top pair and the flush draw. We bink river for top 2. They bet 1/3 pot in the river. And now we just rip it in and get snap called by the aces. So I don't think there's too many other ways to play that hand, this queen 10. I think it's a reasonable way to play it. Kind of just call down with like your decent pair and draws. And then when you just make a really strong hand on the river, you just rip it in. Okay, what is this one? So we wake up with pocket queens. In the big blind, the cutoff opens to 2.5 and the small blind 3 bets to 11. We go for the cold 4-bet to 24.5. Ace king rips it, 10s folds, and we call with the queens, and we hold. Very nice. All right, pocket 2s. 7-9, the small blind opens. We flat the 2s. We flop a nice little bottom set. The 7-9 goes for the bet. We raise. Against like really small bets, you should just be doing a lot of raising. You can just like protect your calling range with a bunch of draws and pairs. So not really necessary to have the set in the calling range in position, especially when you're deep. King comes. We bet. They call. They make 2 pair on the river. They check. We bet. Nice little pot size bet. And they call. Probably could have got more value somewhere, but I mean they make 2 pair. This 2 pair is like a reasonable hand to call. Where else could I have gotten value? Don't like betting too much bigger on the turn because the king is like pretty good for like the bluffs in the range. Usually makes a lot of new top pair. And like if they actually have king 9, like king 3, they're going to raise now. So I think it's reasonable. I don't think we could have got too much more than that out of this hand against this particular opponent hand type. When they have top 2, they're going to raise somewhere. So we're going to stack that. Middle 2 is like a pretty weak hand. So just calling down is reasonable against this aggressive line from by me. And like, I mean, it's not that small of a pot. I mean, we win for like 40, 42 blinds off them. All right. Next up, pocket aces, we go for the limp. The king jack suited goes for the raise, which not as many players will do with king jack suited against the low jack open raise. The Pocket queens comes in for the cold 3-bet. We back 4-bet. King jack obviously lets it go. They rip it. We call with our aces and we hold. Ace queen in the big blind. We squeeze our pocket 4s, pocket 9s out of the MP and button respectively. Pocket 4s calls. We go for a 1/3 bet. Pocket 4s decides to get really funky and raise on this kind of dry board. I mean, this board obviously is going to have some like gut shot type hands with like king jack, king 10, jack 10. There's also like 10-9 as a gut shot as well. But it's fairly dry without the presence of a flush draw and without any overs. So could go for a 3-bet, but I think against a lot of weaker players, if they want to like punt off with whatever they have, they'll just do it if you just call down. So we go for the call, we make a boat, we check, they rip the turn, pocket 4s and no draw, and we obviously snap off top boat. So it's a nice little win for us. King jack, open it up. The ace-8 offsuit, flats in the small blind, and we face this really tiny raise out of the big blind. Probably could fold like a king jack offsuit just because like it doesn't really play that well, and like we're going to go multi-way a fair amount of the time. But I'm in position, so it's not that bad of a call, I think. And we decide to go for the 4-bet. Very aggressive. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, 4-bet, jacks calls. And now what do they do? So we got the ace, queen, 8. Very dry board. Pocket jacks, checks. We bet small on the flop here. This small bet will basically just get a lot of like pocket pair hands to fold out. At least it should. And pocket jacks calls. 9 on the turn. So like we've got a gut shot to the nuts. Pocket jacks has a gut shot to the second nuts. We check. Sorry, they check. We bet half pot. They call. And it's a nuts versus second nuts on the river here. They donk jam and we snap it off. It's debatable whether jack should like be floating the flop too often, but once it gets a turn, like it's probably reasonable-ish to call. But then again, they've also got like stuff like queen jack, ace jack. And I don't mind the way they play the hand post flop. Pre-flop is a bit funky. 4-5 suited, open up in the cutoff. 9-7 suited in the big line, it calls. We flop a double gut shot, and they flop an open ender. So it's going to be battle of the open enders on this 8-6-2 flop. We go for a 3/4 pot bet. They go for the raise. We call. We make the nuts on the turn here. They keep barreling for 3/4 pot. We call. Probably could raise, but given the fact that we're only going to have 65 left and the pot is already 71, less than a pot size bet on the river, even if like one of the two flush draws makes it and they jam, we're probably going to be calling anyway. And so this hand like has a really high EV when one of those flushes doesn't complete. So I don't mind trapping it. On the other hand, if we've got like a set or something, yeah, just rip it in. The flush comes on the river. This flush is probably the better flush to actually have because there's going to be slightly more flush draws than backdoor flush draws that take this line of the opponent. They rip it in. We're obviously calling with the nut straight. And yeah, they were bluffing. It happens sometimes at 200. Okay. 6-5 is our opponent's hand on the button. 10-9 is our opponent's hand in the small blinds. This guy is quite short, 25. We've got ace king. We go for a smaller squeeze. I think that I wanted to keep enough stack depth left so if this guy rips it over the top, we can jam again. They call. 10-9 lets it go. We make the flush draw and 2 overs. So feeling quite good about our hand. We bet 6-5 with the gut shot calls. 6-5 make it, and we also make our flush. So, as a lot of you guys know, I really like trapping the nut flush out of position in 3-bet pots, just because players never think that you actually have a flush. I'm not sure why, but they do. We check, 6-5 just rips it. It's not an unreasonable thing to do. I mean, they should be trying to protect against like single flush over cards. Like we're gonna have ace king with just either a diamond, with like a single diamond, a decent chunk of the time, and so like they want to bet deny equity from that, and we just snap call with the nuts. It's not the nuts, it's the nut flush, and they've got the nuts straight. Nuts would be quads, threes. Okay. We have the ace 4. We go for the 3-bet. Pocket sixes in the low jack calls. We make a nice little pair plus flush draw. And we check back on the flop. I don't mind checking back like a pair plus flush draw in position, just because like a decent amount of the time, you're going to need some flush draws in your checking range. And so like, because you're checking back, you're getting closer to showdown. So using the ones with a pair, even though they're technically stronger and they dominate the other flushes, the other flush draws, they're going to be pretty reasonable, because the other alternative is like you're trying to show down, which is a line that you can take with a pair. Like a lot of pairs will just show down and win. So checking back some pair plus flush draw hands is going to be a reasonable play, I think, even though they're very strong draws. So we make the flush on the turn here. Pocket sixes checks. We bet here on the turn. Pocket sixes with their flush draw. I mean, it's basically 6 high. Decides to call. 4 on the river. They check. We go for a half pot bet. Trying to get value from like a 1 pair hand here. I mean, we block a lot of stuff because we've blocked the trips. If they rip it in, we're obviously going to be calling, and they decide to call. So they hero call with a very weak 2 pair. And we win a decent sizable pot there. So in this hand, our opponent opens king queen in the button to 2 big blinds. We 3-bet the ace queen offsuit in the small blind to 13. They call. We make a nice little top pair second kicker. We go for a half pot bet, and a decent chunk of the time when I've got like ace queen, ace king on boards like this, I just like bet jam. King queen calls with their gut shot. Bet the turn, half pot. King queen also calls again. They make a queen in the river. We make 2 pair. We rip it in, and they make a hero call in the river, which is a little bit questionable because at this stage we're ripping like ace king or ace queen. So having the king queen, maybe its blockers are like decent because it double blocks both of those hands. Interesting call by our opponent. So that was covering some of the big pots that we played over this week. I hope you enjoyed this little update. We roughly break even in the dollars, but we're actually winning at 13 BB per 100 across the few stakes that we're playing. So playing mostly zone, but do chuck in a few reg tables from time to time. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all later. Bye now.